Yes, welcome to the first iteration of the Breakdown Show. We do a preview and we do a review. Today is the first episode of the preview show, and I am excited. I'm very excited about this whole concept, but there are obviously going to be some teething issues here. So please just bear with me at least over the next couple of weeks while we sort of figure out all of the little kinks and stuff, but also give me all of the feedback you can possibly give. So this is a footy preview show. We're going to mix some fun new segments, including a player ranking pyramid every single week, a countdown of the people under the most pressure, a full in-depth breakdown of the key matchup for the week ahead, as well as a breakdown of the other matches to be played across the weekend, which is really, really exciting. We will also cover the news and any big stories that are coming out this week. There's a few to get through today. But enough of that. It is a huge round of football, not because there's a whole lot of games being played, but because it's the first round of footy. And it's the first time we're going to see these teams really go head-to-head. So it's time to get straight into the breakdown here with myself, Jared Davis, and our first segment is all about the key matchup this week. So the key matchup for me this week, I think it's relatively simple. It is Carlton versus Sydney, and I think it's that for a number of reasons. One, it's the first game of the season. This is the real tone setter, but two, there is a lot of recent history between these two clubs, considering the huge trade that we saw with Charlie Curnow in the offseason. Both of these clubs feeling like they got better. They got the better end of that trade. We're going to see potentially a little bit of fireworks between these two teams. Hopefully a little bit of buy-in, a little bit of fight. That would be nice. A little bit of confrontation between the two clubs would be really, really good. But there are plenty of things that we have to get to, including what are we actually looking for this game? What do we need to see? If Carlton's going to win, what are they going to have to do? If Sydney's going to win, what are they going to have to do to win? How are they going to have to play? Well, let's head to the vision board and let's discuss. So we're quickly going to look through some vision here, and what we're going to focus on here is what I think each team needs to do to be able to win this game. So for Sydney, you need to be able to transition the ball. You were ranked 4th in transition from your defensive half to your forward 50. That was great. Last year, your transition game was really, really good. What you really struggled with was converting going inside forward 50. Just 12th for scores per inside 50. So what Sydney need to do is transition the ball, which means what Carlton have to do is stop this. We saw this in the match simulation from the defensive half through Errol Goulden, through Nick Blakey. We're going to see Sheldrick. We're going to see Bice. Through all of these players, as soon as the ball hits the ground inside their defensive 50, these midfielders are going to start to spread. We're going to see James Jordan spread. We're going to see Nick Blakey create a 2v1 here with Errol Goulden and spread from this initial contest. And as soon as they get the ball into free space, into transition football, they are so hard to stop because not only are they a really good running team, I mean, look at the work here from their forwards and from their wingers to just lengthen the ground here, to force these Dogs players to continue to push back into the defensive 50, which is what opens up this massive area of space here for Goulden and Blakey to use their running power and to use their speed and their agility to just create so many problems for this Bulldogs defense in this match simulation. But the difference to last year is that we saw this transition a lot last year. But what we didn't see and what they didn't have was a player inside the forward 50 who could win genuine one-on-one contests like Charlie Curnow. And that's the difference that Curnow is going to create, because Sydney are going to be able to transition to football. What they didn't do last year was generate scores when they went inside forward 50, especially if they're off their transition game. Charlie Curnow is going to provide a focal point inside that forward 50 where he's going to be able to win one-on-one contests if Sydney can transition the ball as easily as they have been able to do for the last few years now. So what Carlton have to do is stop that transition football, and whether that's by controlling the football themselves, whether that's by really setting a defensive structure that even when they're attacking and going inside forward 50, being really quick, really smart to switch on defensively and cut off those outlet options that we saw where you don't have Errol Goulden and Nick Blakey just running into 50 meters of open space. You've got to be able to close that space. And when we talk about closing space, it's not only in transition. What we're going to see a lot from Sydney this year is the use of Errol Goulden, is the use of Chad Warner, is the use of Isaac Heaney, way more creatively around stoppage because of the new ruck rules. So what we're going to see here is Errol Gordon in a one-on-one contest. Now, Joel Frazier, he's a great athlete. He's a really, really good athlete. Is he as athletic? Is he as agile? Is he as explosive as an Errol Gordon? Probably not. And when I'm looking at the Carlton midfield, that is the matchup that I'm going to be fascinated to watch, because can Paddy Cripps, can George Hewitt, can they keep up with a Chad Warner, with an Isaac Heaney, with an Errol Gordon coming out of stoppage, coming out of clearance? Because you not only have to stop them from transitioning the ball really fast, out of stoppage and out of clearance, you can't give them this sort of space, because what we're going to see again here is they have such great ball use, such great foot skills, that if they get that sort of supply going inside forward 50, I don't care who's defending Charlie Kerner, or I don't care who's defending a Logan McDonald or even a Tom Papley at ground level. If they can create this sort of separation, which they will be able to, and you allow that sort of ball use coming inside the forward 50, I don't care if it's Jacob Wiedering on Charlie Kerner, he's not going to be able to stop that sort of ball movement. So Carlton have to be so switched on with their pressure on the ball carrier, not allowing Sydney to transition the football and not allowing Sydney to get out the front of any stoppage or any contest, because if you give them an inch, they will absolutely take a mile with their ball use and with their foot skills. And on the Sydney side of things, what we want to see from Sydney, or what Sydney fans are going to need to happen for them to be really successful and kickstart their transition game, is they're going to have to get the ball to ground a lot, and that means that they can't allow Carlton to do this. So we saw in the match simulation, there was a clear directive from Michael Voss, a clear change in the game plan for Carlton to do this. So George Hewitt does not blaze away, looks for the really good option here in Ainsworth, but look at the rest of the Carlton players, not blazing away like we usually see them. They're actually trying to create options through the middle of the ground, through Chera, and Ainsworth, again, doesn't blaze away, goes to a really good option here on the lead. But again, we get to half forward to where Carlton usually are turning around and kicking this ball 60 metres inside 50 on Harry Mackay's head, or what used to be Charlie Kerno's head. But look at the eyes directing straight into the middle of the ground. But it's not only on the kicker, it's also on the leaders here. So Adam Chera running through the middle of the ground. We're going to see George Hewitt run through the middle of the ground. We're going to see Ainsworth come through as well. So it's on the kicker to look for those options, and it's also on the leaders here, on the people without the football, to actually create these options. And that's what Carlton are going to have to do this year. And this is what Sydney are going to have to not do, because if Carlton can just chip the ball around and get the ball moving through these short kicks and this new style of ball movement, then Sydney's transition game is not going to have the same firepower if Carlton are able to control the game, control the football, kick mark here, kick mark there. So Sydney have to really focus on, how do we force this Carlton team to go back into their bad habits? How do we force them to go back to kicking long up the line? That's going to be the sort of battle all night. So exactly as I just said, today I think is going to be all about the transition game, and the transition game specifically on behalf of Sydney. I think Carlton's transition game is going to look, hopefully, or at least we want it to look like we saw in the match simulation, in the sense of we're going to take the short kicks, we're going to spread the ground a little bit, we're going to change angles and shift the defensive zone of the Sydney Swans. And what that is going to do is actually not allow Sydney to kickstart their transition. If Carlton go long up the line and that ball hits the deck, Sydney are going to run and gun and use their speed and use their pace on the outside with players like Nick Blakey and like Errol Gordon, like we saw in that example, and they are going to transition the ball from their defensive half to their forward 50 before Carlton can even blink. So for Carlton, I think it's all about ball control. I think it's all about time of possession. I think it's all about changing the angles and forcing Sydney to defend. And for Sydney, I think it's all about forcing Carlton to make that bailout kick, covering all of the short options, making sure Carlton panic and put that ball into contested areas coming out of this game. Obviously, it is Charlie Kerno's first official game suiting up in the Sydney colours, and the same can be said on the Carlton side, with plenty of fresh faces. 7 new players to this Carlton side, to be exact. The obvious ones being both Ollie Florent and Will Hayward, who are both from Sydney, from the Sydney Football Club. Ben Ainsworth from the Sun comes in. He provides a different look in their forward line. Campbell Chesser showed some things at West Coast. He gets an opportunity. And Liam Reedy coming in as the second ruck from Fremantle. I'm going to be interested to see how they use that second ruck option, and to be fair, how all of the teams are going to use the second ruck potentially this year. And we've also got a couple of highly touted debutants in Jagger Smith and Harry Dean, who should make an immediate impact, or at least a lot of fans think they're going to make an immediate impact on this team. So there's the new faces for Carlton. For Sydney, obviously Charlie Curnow suiting up in his first game, but also Malcolm Roses Jr. from the Gold Coast Suns. A little bit of a live wire, a little bit of maybe a foil to Tom Papley, a little bit of a second option at ground level inside that forward 50 will be interesting. And my one that I'm more interested in is Liam Sarong. Where do they play him? Are they going to play him on a wing? Are they going to play Liam Sarong down back where I think they should play him? Can he be a third tall defender, potentially a one-on-one defender? Can he be the one that comes off his man and stands in front of Harry Mackay at every marking opportunity and gets that ball to ground to allow Sydney to transition or start their transition game? Potentially he's the one. I think he's going to be the one that's going to play a huge role in the success of the Sydney side this season. But with the overall game plan out of the way, with the overall news and the fresh faces in the team, what matchup do I think is actually going to be fascinating to watch? What matchup do I think is actually going to win this game? And I think it is the battle of the midfields. And to be fair, battle of the midfield decides a lot of games, but I think it's especially interesting in this one because of the reputation of both of these midfields. So if we just look at them on paper, we're looking at a Carlton team that is about contest and defense, or at least has been about contest and defense for half a decade now. That lives in congestion and lives in fight and lives in, dirty ball around contest and just battle. Let's just keep the ball in tight and focused and pressure and physicality versus a Sydney team where I'm looking at that midfield going Chad Warner, Isaac Heaney, Nick Blakey can roll through there, Errol Goulden on the outside. We're looking at that team and going, well, they're all about getting the ball on the outside, using their physical gifts, using their agility and their escapability and their outside run and their speed to get the ball moving really quickly. So we've almost got this battle of two opposing styles of midfielders. Obviously, Carlton have Sam Walsh and Jagger Smith, who, at least in those practice matches, look like they can add a little bit of speed on the outside. But traditionally, we've got two midfields that are sort of opposing. And obviously, the second key matchup that we've got to talk about, it's Jacob Wiedering versus Charlie Curnow. They're going to line up on each other, hopefully in the goal square from the first centre bounce, and that's going to be fascinating. They obviously would have played a lot against each other in training, but realistically, there's only two questions to answer here. One, can Jacob Wiedering, fresh off an injury, come back and stop Charlie Curnow? But then that brings in the second question. Can Charlie Curnow play at the level that is expected? Can he play at that top level? Because a lot of Carlton fans will tell you that sometimes it's frustrating watching him. Sometimes it's frustrating watching him because he feels like he's not really connected. It feels like he's not really involved in the game or that interested in the game, or that he's not completely bought in. Sometimes he looks like he's a little bit just, I don't want to say off with the fairies, but off with the fairies. What are we looking for from both teams? What am I looking for going, that'd be a win for Carlton, that'd be a win for Sydney? For Carlton, I think you've just got to be different. I don't think Carlton have to necessarily win on the scoreboard to win the game or to come out of it in a positive light. I just think they've got to be different. I think they've got to be different. They've got to show a willingness to try and take the game on, to be different with their ball movement, to be more dynamic with their ball use, to be more aggressive with the way that they try and move the ball going forward. And is that going to open themselves up to more turnovers? Absolutely. But that is sort of the risk you've got to play in the modern game of football, because this long up the line does not work, and it hasn't worked for them, and it's definitely not going to work now. And for Sydney, can you put on a statement performance? Can you put on a performance that makes the rest of the league go, bang, we are here and we are a genuine contender? That is what we're looking for from Sydney. And that wraps up our Sydney versus Carlton preview. Let me know all of your thoughts about that game. We're going to get to the rest of the games this weekend as well in just a minute, but I want to hear your thoughts. Are we backing in Carlton? Are we backing in Sydney? I'll be throwing in my predictions at the end of this video, so you can stick around for those. But I want to know, do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Give me all your thoughts about the Carlton-Sydney matchup. But now we get into the other games. On Friday night, we have Gold Coast versus Geelong on the Gold Coast. And we don't have the teams just yet, but we're going to expect to see Christian Petrarca play his first game for the Suns. And the return to senior footy for Jamarra Ugle-Hagan looks like it is going to be locked in. this weekend. So that's exciting on a couple different fronts. Jamara at his best is a very exciting player, and obviously for a lot of Suns fans, which maybe there's not a whole lot of them, Christian Petrarca coming to the side just gives them a new dynamic. It's a fresh start from him. We like to see the best players play at their best. Christian Petrarca, can he live up to the expectation and add a new sort of dynamic piece to this Gold Coast Suns team, this midfield, this forward line? Well, that's what we're going to find out. The key matchups for this game, I think, again, it is the midfield, because it's two very high-powered midfields, and we've seen what Gold Coast have been able to do in the preseason, especially from centre bounce. They were the best scoring centre bounce team in the preseason, and that says a lot with the new rules and their midfield and their willingness to be creative around stoppage and be creative around centre bounce and take the game on and push forward. And that's sort of the way that the Gold Coast Suns are built. I mean, we're talking about Noah Anderson, we're talking about Christian Petrarca and Bailey Humphrey, these forward of centre players, these players who start in the centre bounce or start at a stoppage and just really rush forward and put pressure on the opposition midfielders, versus the Geelong midfield, which is, again, really high-powered midfield. Dangerfield will roll through there. We'll have Bailey Smith roll through there. Max Holmes. Can Atkins play a really nice defensive role on a Noah Anderson type player? These are two very high-powered midfields, very quick midfields, very stream forward heavy midfielders. Who's going to get the best of this battle? That's going to be a fascinating battle to watch. In terms of what we're looking for from these teams, I think for Geelong, it's kind of just a game where you just want to blow off the rust. And I know that sounds bad considering it's round zero, it's the first official game, but preseason clearly didn't mean a whole lot to the Geelong Football Club, and it never really has. So I think they'll just be looking to settle back into their game plan. And the second thing I think they'll be looking out for is their younger players. Can their younger players take a step? And when I'm talking about their younger players taking a step, I'm talking about the different role that their younger players are going to have to play. So can Lawson Humphreys be a really elite distributor off that half-back line? Is he going to be given the license to be the number one distributor off that half-back line? And for Gold Coast, I think all I want to see from them is the firepower. I want to see this just completely stacked lineup that just has talent and momentum and pace and damage just absolutely everywhere. I want to see them put on a show. I want to see them turn People's First Stadium into a fortress again, where teams go up there and they just get walloped. That's all I'm looking for from Gold Coast this week. And that takes us to the next game, which is GWS versus Hawthorn, Saturday Arvo at NG Stadium. Now, GWS have just had a horror run with injuries in the preseason. So how does that impact a team? This team is a genuine premiership contender. This is a team that can, you know, be a real top of the table team, and now they've just been struck down by injuries. What does that do to the psyche of the GWS Giants? So that's going to be a fascinating story to sort of follow. The second story that we've got to talk about is Clayton Oliver. I mean, it was a huge story when it happened, and now it's sort of died down a little bit. And I think he came out the other day and said that it's exciting that he hasn't been in the front page of a newspaper. Well, I think he should want to be front page of the newspaper, but for a good reason. Like he should want to be able to take over this midfield given the injuries and say, boys, get on my back. Let's take us back to 2021, 2022. Clayton Oliver, and just put the team on the back, become a clearance beast, get the ball going the Giants' way. And for the Hawks, I just don't think they've had the best off season. Health wise, they've been really, really, really good outside of Will Day. You know, considering a lot of the other teams in the league, but we are looking at a team with a depleted midfield, relying on just internal development and growth from the younger, unproven players. And I'm not sold on the forward line just yet. I mean, I could look really dumb in a few weeks when this comes out. But I'm just going to put it out there. This forward line is scaring me a little bit. I just don't know, outside of relying on natural development and natural improvement, how did they get better? How do they get better? Obviously, there's a few key matchups in this game as well. And I think it is obviously the midfield battle. And I've said midfield battle 3 times in a row, but the story of this game is absolutely the midfield battle. For the Hawks, it's the alleged lack of talent, and for the Giants, it's the injury part of the ground for them. It's the place that's just been hammered with injuries. Who's going to take the reins of the midfield battle? of these depleted midfields and really just set a standard and take the game on. That's going to be a fascinating thing. For GWS, all I'm looking for in this game is just about cover. And when I talk about cover, I'm talking about how are they going to cover their injuries? How are they going to shift or move the way that they play or the way that they defend to cover for these injuries? And how is their system going to change or adapt? And for Hawthorn, I just want to see, can you back up a good season with a great one? So what we're going to see here today is the development. Can we see flashes of brilliance? Can we see flashes from young players, from unproven players to say, hey, I'm here, I'm ready to take this team, I'm ready to take over this team, and I'm ready to be the one or to be the younger players that drive us to the promised land, that become the driver of our development and our improvement from last year. Because we had a good season last year. The only way that we can have a great season is if we improve, and the only way that we can improve is if we get natural development from our younger players. So who's going to be those younger players? Can we see flashes of those players tonight? That's what I'm looking for out of the Hawthorn Hawks. Saturday night, we've got an absolute blockbuster. This is going to be a game that I'm very excited to watch. Brisbane versus the Bulldogs at the Gabba. Now, obviously, Brisbane are the cream of the crop. They're the best team in the league. They have been for the last few years, and they've basically had a very clean off-season with regard to the footballing side of things. I'm not going to comment on the the extracurricular activities of the players. That's not what I'm here to talk about. I think there's a little bit of vulnerability just in the fact that the Lions have had a shorter off-season for, the third or fourth season in a row. Does that play a factor? Does that open the Bulldogs up just an inch, or does that open the door just a little bit for the Bulldogs to come and ram through and take a massive scalp? Because that would be a huge story round one. For the Bulldogs, they've just completely backed themselves in this year. I mean, they haven't really changed a whole lot from last year. They haven't thrown the magnets around. They haven't brought in a bunch of different players. They've just gone, this is the team that's going to take us to that flag. This is the team that is going to take us to the promised land. And I'm fascinated to watch if that's a delusional thought potentially, or if that is a fair and understandable and reasonable thought. Well, we're going to find out very, 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 very soon. The key matchup for me here is the Brisbane forward line, and it's because they've got stars and emerging stars absolutely everywhere. I mean, we're looking at this front six, and we're looking at Ty Gallup, emerging star. Logan Morris, you could argue, is an absolute star at the moment. Lincoln McCarthy comes back into this team. Charlie Cameron has still got it. Zach Bailey, Cameron. I mean, this team is just dangerous as it gets. I mean, this forward line is a scary proposition, and it's up against a widely considered disappointing backline. I mean, we're talking about the one part of the ground that the Bulldogs don't really have consistency or genuine star talent back there, and it's sort of been their Achilles heel for the last couple of years. And this is where the game is going to be won or lost. This is where the game is going to be won or lost in the Brisbane Lions forward line, because what we're looking for from the Bulldogs is just defensive ability. Can you hold up enough? Can you give your mids and your forwards a fighting chance here? Because it's all good and well if they go and score 140, but if you give up 150, it doesn't really matter. So this is all about the defense for the Dogs. Can you just give them a sniff? Can you hold this high-powered Lions offense and this high-powered Lions forward line to a defendable number? For the Lions, we don't really need to see anything. I mean, like if the Lions go out and get smashed by 40 points, I'm not going to be deterred. If they go out and win by 40, I'm not going to really say that they've proven anything more than they have already proven. So for the Lions, I'm just saying, we know who you are. We know what you're capable of. You'll come out and, attempt to blow the cobwebs off a little bit and get back into the flow. And I'm not really looking for anything on the Brisbane Lions side of things. Which leaves us with one game left, and that is Collingwood versus St Kilda at the G, Sunday night, the absolute pinnacle. And that brings us to the first topic, This is a huge game for St Kilda in particular, because this is what you have wanted. This is what the Saints have begged for and complained about for years and years and years, and that is genuine relevance. The big stage against the biggest team. It's probably going to be the biggest game they've played in over a decade, probably since that 2010 grand final. I mean, it's definitely going to be up there, because you've brought in the new recruits. You've brought in Flanders and De Koning and Silvani and Flying Ryan. You re-signed Naz and you're moving him to the middle of the ground, and he's the hot favourite to win the Brownlow and all of these things. And what else is huge? The key matchup in this game, because the key matchup in this game is Dacos versus Nasiah Wanganeen-Miller. Obviously, they're not going to go head-to-head. So it's more about the defensive midfielders who get a hold of them. So who is going to take Nasiah Wanganeen-Miller? Collingwood don't traditionally tag anyone, and we've basically seen a whole bunch of midfielders just get a hold of them for years and years now. But you'd think surely they've got a plan. Surely they've got an option. Surely they've got a player, at least a backup plan or a plan C for Nasiah Wanganeen-Miller. Surely. And then on the Dacos side, I'm not sure if it'll be Windhager. We saw Windhager get him a couple times last year. I'm not sure it'll be him again, considering we saw him play off half back a little bit. But we absolutely know that Ross Lyon's not going to allow Nick Dacos to run free around this ground. There's going to be some attention. There's going to be some time and some work put into trying to quell the influence of Nick Dacos. Which brings us to the predictions for this round, and I've got Sydney over Carlton by 28, Geelong over the Gold Coast Suns by 11, GWS beating the Hawks in a little bit of an upset by 19. I've got another upset with the Bulldogs beating Brisbane by 9 points, and I've got St Kilda over Collingwood by 31. I think that's going to be it should be a relatively easy win, considering the amount of outs Collingwood have and the fact that they're going to be blowing off a lot of rust. So Sydney, Geelong, GWS, the Bulldogs and St Kilda win it for me. But now we get to the best part of the show, in my opinion, the two segments, weekly recurring segments. Here we go. The first one is the player pyramid. Welcome to our first segment of the year, and it's called King of the Hill. Now, if you haven't seen, my favorite American sports talk show is First Things First, and they have King of the Hill and they have Mahomes Mountain, but we don't have that here in Australia. We don't have a weekly player ranking system where we can really truly judge who I think is the best player in the league, who's playing best at the moment, who's hottest, plus who has the historical advantage of being just a genuine superstar legend of the game. We put all of those things into a big bowl of formula, and it spits out the top 15 players in rows. The only thing you've got to understand is that red means that the player has come down the hill, green means the player has come up the hill, and blue means they have kept their spot. Obviously, this is the first week, or this is opening round, so everyone's going to be on the blue tiers, but let's get right into it. Bottom of the hill starting out this year, it's Mr. Tinder, it's Bailey Smith. What he does off the ball, what he does in the middle of the contest, what he does on the outside of the contest, what he does do really well, I think is the most important part of the game, and that is the ability to break through lines. And I mean break through lines in the on-field perspective. What he does off the field, I don't want to comment on that, but he does break through the lines on the field, and that is arguably, in my opinion, the most important part of the game and most important part of the modern game. He lands on bottom of the hill. We've got Sarong so right, and what he does is just unbelievable. He is the epitome of just genuine consistency, and I still think he's underrated for what he provides to this Fremantle team, both as a player, but also as a leader. So he absolutely deserves his spot on the hill. We've got Sam Wemby Darcy. I mean, how could you not have him on there? He is a genuine unicorn of the league. He's a unicorn of the game. He can kill you in the air. He can kill you on ground level. He goes left foot. He goes right foot. He goes mark. He goes at ground. He just does it all. He does it absolutely all, and he's looking like he's ready to just take over the league. So Sam Darcy lands on the hill. We've got Isaac Rankin, Guy Sebastian. Now, if you don't know why it's Guy Sebastian, it's because I kind of think he looks a little bit like him, and he plays the guitar and sings quite well. So he's our Guy Sebastian this year. And he's just an electric superstar. He is one of those players that only needs 5 or so minutes to just completely take over a game. And that is one of the most valuable skill sets in the game. And we saw what Adelaide looked like without him. They didn't quite look the same. Rounding out our bottom row of the hill, we've got Mad Max Gawn. He's the best ruckman in the league. He's the best ruckman this generation. He's arguably one of the best rucks of all time. And he is going to use this new ruck rule to his advantage against a lot of ruckmen. He's one of the better tap ruckmans we've seen in a while. Plus what he does defensively, creating just a black hole for the opposition offense by just taking intercept marks and taking over a huge amount of space. He absolutely deserves his spot on the bottom row of the hill. Next, above them on the second bottom row, we've got Nazaya, the Messiah, Wanganeen, Milaran. To be fair, he could probably be higher, but I just want to temper expectations just a little bit. This is his first time playing in the midfield. We saw what he did last year. Can he live up to that same performance whilst having the weight of the word on him, whilst having all of the taggers, whilst having all of the opposition analysis focused on him, plus the body toll that it's going to take, the physical toll that it's going to take to play full-time midfield for an entire year? He lands on the second bottom row. Next to him, we've got Jordan Dawson. He's one of the most underrated players in the league. He's a leader. He beats you in the air. He beats you at ground level. He's skillful. He's clean. He's just deadly by foot. That is the type of player that every coach would love to have on their team. We've got Mr. 100, Jeremy Cameron, here as well. Now, he didn't quite crack the 100 goals. It was on for a huge portion of last season, so I'm going to back him in. I want to see if he can get to that 100 again. He's going to have a few games where he can, although coming into the season injured, he's still probably the most dominant forward in the league in all facets. I mean, he is just a magician, a Swiss Army knife operator inside that forward 50. He well and truly deserves his spot here. Then we've got Isaac Heaney, Vogue, and I've called him Vogue because he sort of looks like a Vogue model more than a footballer, and that is an absolute compliment. But when he goes on that field, he's a genuine superstar footballer. We're talking about a bloke with genuine finesse, with genuine forward skills, with genuine midfield skills. The guy can do it absolutely all on the field. He absolutely deserves his spot on the second bottom row. Above them, and we're really starting to get to the top of this hill here, we've got Jimmy Noah Anderson. Obviously, Jimmy Anderson, the English legend bowler, but Jimmy Noah Anderson absolutely deserves his spot. The guy's a genuine freak. The guy's a freak. He's a freak, and what he's added to his game recently or towards the back end of last year is his ability forward of centre to actually damage the opposition, not only with his ball use, but his ability to actually hit the scoreboard. That's what we're going to see more from this year. If you didn't watch my predictions video, I've got Noah Anderson winning the Brownlow this year. I think he's going to get a whole lot of votes, a whole lot of stats, a whole lot of possessions. The umpires are going to be in his face, and he is well deserving of being here this high on the list. We've got next Harris Sauce Andrews. I'm not sold on the nickname of Harris Andrews here of Sauce. I've tried to make him somewhat interesting, but I'm not sold on Harris Andrews. So let me know if you've got a better one for Harris Andrews, and we'll switch it out next week. But obviously, he's the best defender in the league. He's the best one-on-one defender in the league. I think he's the best intercept defender in the league. He's just a freak of nature, that guy. So he deserves his spot. And we can't go past the Matt Rowell Brownlow medalist, the Moo, the cow man, the man eating grass before every game, the weird guy, but hey, you can be as weird as you want if you win Brownlows, breaking tackles and getting clearances left, right, and center. You can do whatever you want, brother. You absolutely deserve your spot. Let's go to the next. We are here at the top three now. Top three, it's got to start with the Bont. I mean, look at that. The guy is just, not only is he beautiful, the Bont, he's courageous. He's one of the best midfielders in the league, if not by far the best midfielder in the league. He's absolutely in that conversation, but what he can do around the ground is just hurt you in so many different ways. There's probably not enough that's been said about him, even though everyone talks about him as arguably the best player in the league, and there still hasn't had enough adoration from the fans to him. So he was never going to be lower on this list than that. So he is absolutely in this position. Next to him, we've got Zach Butters. We've called him Margarine here. Margarine, butter, Zach Butters. Anyway, he's not going to win a whole lot of games this year compared to a lot of the players on this list, but what he is going to do is just dominate teams. He is just an absolute pit bull. He is just the epitome of reckless, crazy brilliance. The king of the hill for opening round is Whisper Nicky Dacos. And I mean, what more could you say about him? Obviously, You could mix and match a few of these players, especially these two, but I've started with Nick Dacos. So these players are going to move up and down. Players who aren't on the hill are going to get the chance to come onto the hill. You guys can drop off if you start to play poorly. Obviously, there are little caveats here and there. If you're a legend, you might get a little bit more leeway to stay on longer. If you're a superstar of the game, you can have a few down weeks and not just completely disappear off the list. It's not a week by week ranking. It's not if you had 40 touches one week, you get to instantly come to the top of the hill. That's not how it works. You've got to work your way. You've got to work your way. You've got to battle. You've got to battle through the season to work your way up the hill to potentially be named King of the Hill every single week during the preview show. And you guys get to be a part of this. You guys can nominate players. You guys can tell me who to move up, who to move down. But that is King of the Hill opening round. All the player pyramid just gets me fired up to talk about players. And that we go from celebrating players to putting players under pressure, because welcome to the next segment. I'm still working on a title, but I'm going to call it It's a Big Week for ... people under the most pressure going into this specific week. And we're going to do 3 people or a team or a club or the AFL as a whole every single week. So let's head right into it. So it is a huge week for Charlie Curnow here. I mean, the fact that he's moved clubs, he wanted out of Carlton, he wanted a fresh start, he was willing to basically go anywhere. That's a lot of pressure. You have left the club. Not only are you leaving a club and playing that club in your first game for your new club, a lot of clubs there. So that's pressure in itself. That's pressure in itself. The second part of the pressure is the fact that you are going to be continually compared to Buddy Franklin's move and what Buddy Franklin was able to do at Sydney. And obviously didn't quite win a flag, but made them damn good. And you are going to be the focal point. You are going to have to be the focal point of this Sydney offense, which is going to be a hard thing, which is going to be a big task. You probably haven't had the experience a huge amount of being the number one fiddle whilst not really having a number two. You've always sort of had Harry Mackay around, or at least over the last couple of years you have. Can you go back to being a number one fiddle with not a number two, or at least as an accomplished number two fiddle next to you? That's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure from the outside. It's a lot of pressure just in the sense of this is a game against your old club. There's just a whole lot of pressure. It's a huge week for Charlie Curnow. It's also a huge week for Michael Voss. And it's a huge week for Michael Voss because he came out and he said that he didn't want this season to be about his contract. Well, guess what? If you lose, if you start losing, that's exactly what it's going to be. Because if Carlton don't look different this year, and if Carlton continually underperform like we've seen them do, well, guess what? Unfortunately, Carlton are going to be looking for a new coach, and the story of the season is going to be your contract situation and the fact that you may not make it to the end of the season. Now, I don't want to be scathing and I don't want to be too negative here, but that is the absolute reality. And beyond that, if you get ousted from 2 separate clubs for underperformance, I don't know the record of players, of coaches who have failed at 2 clubs and gone to a third and been successful. I can't imagine the success rate is that high. So this might be your last chance. This might be the year for Michael Voss, the make or break year. Hey, we are going to change our direction. We're going to bunny hop up the ladder. Or is this a year for Michael Voss where maybe he just doesn't have it. Maybe he just doesn't have it to win a premiership as a head coach. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. There are a lot of great coaches who never won a premiership or never really got to that level of brilliance. Michael Voss, I don't think you want to join that list of coaches. So you need to get started tonight. You need to get into a position where you look different, where the team plays different. Because if you look the same, you're going to lose more games and you're going to be ousted and you might not make it through the season. So Michael Voss, it's a big week for you. And the third and final and the biggest week it is a massive week for the St Kilda Football Club in the sense that this is it. I mean, I know I just spoke about it, but this is it. This is everything you've wanted. This is genuine relevance. This is you on the big stage. This is you getting all of the spotlight and the attention and the ability to create headlines and become genuinely relevant. But if you come out this week and you are flat and you lose to a Collingwood team that on paper is not that strong and is very undermanned, specifically and especially in that defensive six. If you lose to Joel Cochran and Billy Frampton playing key defender positions, I don't know what you're going to do. I don't know if you deserve to have another primetime slot like this after you've complained about it and rallied for it and bartered for it and dealed and brokered and whatever for this position and for this ability to be the headline act in Melbourne, to be the only team playing in Melbourne during opening round against the biggest club on the biggest stage in the biggest stadium. This is absolutely everything. This is a huge week for the St Kilda Football Club. You've got all of the big new recruits. You've got the stadium. You've got the game. You've got absolutely everything that you could have wanted. If you get all of that and you squander the opportunity, well, what are we going to sit here on Monday and talk about? We're not going to be talking about the new recruits anymore. We're going to be talking about a potential another letdown season for the St Kilda Football Club. And that's not great considering how much talking we've been doing and how much talking the fans have been doing and how much hope and promise is on this team. This is huge for the St Kilda Football Club. And I know it sounds crazy for a round zero, but this is a genuine huge game for the St Kilda Football Club. So that is who is under the most pressure this week. And it is a huge week for the St Kilda Football Club. It's a huge week for Michael Voss. And it is a huge week for Charlie Kerner. We do have to address the fact that Dennis Cometti has passed away yesterday. He was the voice of a sporting generation. I mean, just an incredible legacy, an incredible impact on not only our game of AFL in so many different ways, but also in so many different ways across the sporting landscape and across sporting codes. That is just an incredible legacy that he leaves behind. There's some incredible tributes that have gone on all forms of media, both social, print, mainstream, radio, all of these different things. Personally, I really loved what Hamish McLaughlin spoke about in regards to his memories of Dennis, the legendary commentator, on SEN and Kane Corns' Locked In program. I thought Hamish did a really good job of giving us an insight into not only Dennis the caller that we all know, but Dennis the man and Dennis the professional and Dennis the friend and Dennis the mentor. I think that was a really fascinating insightful discussion that Hamish McLaughlin led on SEN's Locked In program with Kane Corns. So obviously a sour note to sort of, end the video on. That's the end of the show, really. We're going to be back here on pretty much every single week. We'll do a sort of review of tonight's game tomorrow morning with some breakdown of some vision. We'll be back Saturday, Sunday, and then Monday for the review show. This style of show, reviewing the round with some new segments and a slightly different style and flavor, which is really good. But if you stuck around this long, I really do appreciate it. Hopefully this sort of feels like a little bit more of a TV show style of offering, and hopefully you guys can sort of come back each and every week and we can build on these segments and we can build on the connection between the audience and myself. And so if you have any thoughts or opinions on how we can improve it, please feel free to let me know down in the comments below, and let me know all of your thoughts about this weekend's slate of football and games and everything in between. I appreciate you all being here. Please feel free to stick around and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Cheers.